Welcome to No Boxes, Just Verses, the podcast where we go beyond the bios, beyond the resumes and the titles, and we explore the lessons that have shaped some of today's most inspiring leaders, all through the songs that have moved them. Each week, we build a playlist of a leader's life. 5 songs, 5 lessons, 1 unforgettable conversation.
Let's put the pedal to the metal, let the top lean back. I don't know where we're going, I don't know what we're running to. I'm checking for you, how you feel about that. I think it's time we rendezvous.
Today, my guest is Vishal Verma. Welcome. Our listeners are in for a treat because you are.
Thank you.
We've met through friends and just being in the Bay Area and speaking at different conferences. And you're a funny guy.
Oh, thank you.
I will say.
Thank you. As long as you didn't say funny looking, so it's all good.
Already starting, but you're so accomplished. And so it's always a pleasure when we get to see you, to speak with you. And I knew I just had to have you on this podcast because you've really had an amazing journey. And I think it will really resonate with a lot of our listeners out there. But let me get into first your bio and then we'll jump into it. Vishal is a general partner at Edgewood Ventures, LLC, which is a single family office. And also he is with Redwood Collective, LLC, a fund-to-fund for venture capital. You have invested in 17 top-tier venture capital and private equity firms, including Sequoia Capital, Lightspeed Venture Partners, General Catalyst, and several others, because you're such an underachiever. He holds stakes in over 20 private companies, including Wiz, Anduril, Entropic, Glean, and many more. You are a senior advisor to the Honorable Dick Gephardt and the Honorable Secretary Michael Chertoff on their international strategy. You are also, and we're going to get into this, the founder of the Sidebar Summit, a leading network platform based in Silicon Valley. You continue to be an active member of the Chicago Club, and you're also a member of the U.S.-India Cybersecurity Track, 1.5 Dialogue, which is hosted by the Council of Foreign Relations and Observer Research Foundation. But here's one of the things that I really loved about your bio. You're very passionate about a lot of the things that you also give your time and support to. You believe in strong educational systems. You're an active member on the board of trustees of the University of California at Merced. You're also a member of the Leadership Council at the RFK Foundation. And my personal favorite, a member of Best Buddies. And we'll get into what Best Buddies is all about because that's also been very important in my personal life. You got your MBA at Chicago Booth, their grad school university for smart folks who want to be in business. And you founded Hyde Park Angels to promote entrepreneurship in the Chicago area while I believe you were in school. So we'll have to get into that.
Absolutely.
You got your BS degree from Santa Clara University. And again, you have really been a supporter of so many companies and people in the Bay Area, myself included. So, Vishal, welcome to No Boxes, Just Verses.
Well, thank you, Shannon. This is great to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Of course. And so let's jump into it and, your upbringing. We always start with where did you come from, like your adolescence years, what was going on? And I personally love the song that you picked for this time. I love this is a video podcast. I'm sorry for the listeners who can't see what I'm about to do, but Too Legit to Quit by Hammer.
Absolutely. In my formative years, listening to MC Hammer and everyone else was wonderful. Indian origin, came in the 70s from India. My father came to the United States with, I shouldn't say all immigrants, many immigrants, with $8 in his bank account and a dream. And his dream was to do something in technology and try to figure out how he can make his way to Silicon Valley. So in the 70s, our first point of entry was Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C. So he was working with, at that time, ISRO, which is the NASA equivalent of India. And that's what enabled us to come to the United States. And in the early 1980s, we moved to California. And in 82, 83, we moved to Silicon Valley. And he started out as as an engineer and then slowly grew up the management ranks. And then he became an entrepreneur because, as you know, everyone who comes to Silicon Valley I think not even just Silicon Valley, people have an entrepreneur bug no matter where they are. It's just how to structure it. And especially on the technology side, of course, nothing's better than Silicon Valley. So he got the Silicon Valley bug of entrepreneurship and did a few amazing startup companies and then became a venture capitalist. Then we started our family office in late 1990s. So really early on, I saw how innovation and technology really is created, and just not just from the perspective of a product, but the whole food stack, right? If you kind of look at it, product of a company is just one part of it. Financing, team, market, go to market, first adoption in terms of from the product perspective is very important. So I remember growing up in my adolescence, in my single digits, as also in my double digits, in my teens, just the struggles that my father went through in terms of starting a company, getting really a product market fit and other things to that effect when you're starting a company, right? I mean, back then, people were talking in the 90s, they're not talking about applications or AI. They were talking about semiconductors. They were talking about sonnet transport. They were talking about EDA. I mean, nowadays, many kids don't know what EDAs are, but it's now all into that kind of food stack. And now everyone is talking about AI. But that all it builds into where Silicon Valley and the innovations ecosystem that we're here today.
So, Vishal, let's just go back to the song that you picked. Again, I'm so happy to be like too legit to quit. Like that. I mean, that video and the legit to quit, that was so much fun. Why is that what you picked to talk about kind of like your growing up years?
So I saw that closely, like I was mentioning, when my father came from India. As an immigrant generation, you just can't quit, right? I mean, the worst thing could be go back to the country and, to be honest with you, as a failure. So the failure is not an option. So that's the reason why America is such a great country, is because all these immigrants, they're working as hard as anyone can be and harder to make sure they make an amazing life and career in this, where they can raise their families, be good citizens, and be good Americans at the end of the day. So that's where I was thinking too legit to quit. From that perspective, I saw my father, especially in your formidable years, lead by example. I know that's overly said, but he really worked hard to make his American dream. He came with his $8 in his bank account, and before he passed away, unfortunately, in 2020, he had a little bit more than $8 in his account. But at the end of the day, if you kind of look at it, he was making a life for himself and a better life for his family and his kids. So that was the reason why Too Legit to Quit came to be.
That's a great song for the lessons that you really learned early on about that work ethic. And like you said, you're too legit to quit. Like, you're going to grind, you're going to make it here. And he's showing you, he's modeling this for you as a young kid growing up in Northern California. And it's a funny time to grow up here, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Can I just say one more thing? But at the same time, my parents wanted me to become a doctor. That didn't happen.
But isn't that, I will just say, in a lot of immigrant minority communities, it was like you become a doctor, a lawyer. Some are okay with the educator, an engineer for sure. We're okay with that. Anything else is like.
From that perspective, his dream was, but my sister became a doctor, so that was good.
Hey, you always got.
And joking is, this is a quick joke. My dad had being an immigrant generation, and it was my sister and I growing up here in Los Altos. And my dad had a dream that one kid will go to Stanford, the other kid will go to Berkeley. So guess what? I let my sister do both. So she went to Berkeley undergrad and Stanford medical. So
that's
I'm
hilarious.
I'm a very giving person. So
you are so giving. Oh my gosh! But it had to be really interesting growing up here when you did describe, like, what was the diversity like back then, and then you got a hammer connection, and I'm wondering where that started.
So the diversity side, actually growing up in Los Altos, I think it was just amazing. I grew up as a normal American kid. That was quite amazing. However, there's a saying in India, you're living two parallel lives, basically, right? You have the Indian culture that you are living in at home, and then you have the American culture, which is outside. So you're meshing both of them in. And you want to bring the best of the breed from your the culture that you were born in, but at the same time, learn and adopt to the culture that you have adopted into, which is the United States. So it was great growing up. And especially what I do with my kids, we're just, at least my son, we were playing football and basketball and baseball. And one thing he learned was, besides a fan, a soccer star. I'm not a soccer player, but I'm a sports player of the other things. So Interesting enough, Hammer originally was a friend of my father's, and I met him with a technology and business connection. And Hammer is a very, besides being an amazing person and amazing talented artist, he is a thought leader as well as a visionary on technology. So one good thing about while you have exposure to Silicon Valley, like all of us, right? I mean, we're not grown with thinking, oh, shoot, what is the best AI model that you're going to create? No one wakes up or is born with it. You learn things from other folks, right? So one thing being in the vicinity, in the premises of Silicon Valley, if I may put it that way, you just get to learn the best from the best of the breed. Like me and Hammer and, all of these amazing entrepreneurs, we have learned from the best and now contributing our learnings in different forms from startups to mentoring and other young entrepreneurs. And at the end of the day, contributing to this innovation ecosystem that we call Silicon Valley. So,
Yeah, I mean, and we'll get into that a little bit, later, and especially for what you're doing now. But I did think that was fascinating. I was like, wait, you met NC Hammer back in the like
yeah,
that's amazing. We kind of gotten through you growing up in the Bay Area and really learning like the value of hard work and the fact that, you watched how your dad, like you said, came here with $8 and was able to take $8 and multiply and multiply and multiply. Now you have decided to not become a doctor and you
I
head
think the
off
school decided for me. So
you head off to college and eventually grad school. So like walk us through that stage in your life and the song that you picked from there. And I love this song. It's It Ain't Over Till It's Over by Lenny Kravitz.
absolutely. So I would be the first one to admit I wasn't the best student. Hence, I let my sister go to Berkeley and Stanford. So we let her do that and fulfill my father's dream. I went to Santa Clara University, which is an amazing school here. And I gravitated towards, and I'm a numbers guy, and I've always been a numbers guy. I gravitated towards finance because it was just fun and it was, not that it was easy, but it was just fun to figuring out not just balance sheets or from the accounting side, but really structuring of corporations, fundraising, and things to that effect. How can you really add value? And that's the reason how I said in the opening remarks was that technology is just one aspect of a startup, right? Actually, to be honest with you, if I would say it's only a aspect is how you structure and the team is more as important or even more important. So I got an undergrad degree in finance and marketing, and then I went to business school at University of Chicago, so that I got a degree in finance and economics from University of Chicago. So, and I've been in finance my whole life, most of my life, actually, I should say. I had a couple of entrepreneurial stints, and after that, I've been running my family office for almost 30 years.
But it's interesting in that period of your life because you had decided, like you said, not to follow the immigrant pathway of doctor, lawyer, all, engineer, all the things. You decided to go into business, which,
Yeah.
like, what does that mean, right? Does that mean you're going to make any money or be successful? And quite frankly, you became all of those things. You even started businesses while you were in grad school. So, kind of take us through what that was like.
This is kind of interesting. Being, again, from the immigrant generation family, if you're not a doctor, if you're not a lawyer track as a kid, you're not worthy as a kid. What is finance? What is business? I think in India, till recently, till Prime Minister Modi made it cool, being an entrepreneur meant you're unemployed.
Right.
So, so I'm not unemployed. Actually, maybe I am. I don't know. So, undergrad, my dream was to become an investment banker. I wanted to become an investment banker. That didn't happen, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess. But I wanted to go live in Wall Street. I wanted to go do everything. Everyone watched, what was it, the 70s movie, Wall Street. I'm like, that's cool. Buying companies and selling companies and things to that effect. But again, apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So I followed what my father was doing. So that was a big impact. And I had a benefit that one of my strong mentors was my father. So I really saw in terms of this, besides seeing up front, really he helped me tailor my career in terms of where I was going from the perspective of finance, but also what exactly we wanted to do to leave this world with a better mark. So
Those lessons that you learned in your early childhood and like you said, just really watching your father, just being at the foot of like that stuff happening, I think had a real impact and shaped how you started your career and your interest in business. Take us through, you're in, I believe, in grad school when you start your first company. Is that correct? Or maybe not your first, but an impactful one.
Oh my God. If I tell you the companies I've started, you're like, really, Vishal? I've probably started 10 companies and 9 have failed. So actually, the first one I actually started was in 96, was a company called Liquid Disk. And I still have the domain. If anyone's interested on your call, on your video is interested in partnering with it, it's an amazing name. But it's what Dropbox is doing today. Let me take you back to 96. 3 minutes, not 3 minutes. Give me a couple seconds worth of a description of the business plan. So internet is just coming up. AOL. Remember AOL? Welcome to AOL or whatever it sounds, right? And that was cool. Right. Yeah. But you had this 56K modem. It's like in the modem. Right. And you thought that was cool. Right. Right. And then slowly you had these, there's no iPads or iPhones or anything like that. No. You had these big clunky computers, and then you had laptops that you thought was cool, but they were, you can't see but they're like this big. So I thought when I was in college, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, the internet is there. We can store stuff somewhere in the web. Back then we call it cloud today, but back then was called what? Co-location or co-hosting, right? So you had companies like Exodus, AboveNet, and all these other companies which were there. Wow, I'm taking myself so back. This is when I was about 5 years old, when I was learning how to do things. And I think you were 2 years old, so you probably wouldn't have known. Yeah. You wouldn't have known what this is.
Right.
So that was my first company that I started, actually, called Liquid Disk. And the reason we failed is because, very simple, the cost of data was very expensive, right? I mean, the whole laptop that you have today, and the one you and I are using today, could fill this whole room in terms of from a perspective of servers and all that stuff in 1990s. That was one issue. Second issue was connectivity, 56K modem. We didn't have T1 lines coming to your home. And I think the last one was just the devices were not there in terms of in everyone's handheld phones, right? We had those flip phones and we thought we were cool.
We did. I remember that.
We were cool.
You know that they're coming back. Supposedly the kids have flip phones. But
actually, if you look at it, there's just a report saying that for Apple to save themselves from the competition from other companies from Samsung to China is that they need to come out with a flip phone. I don't know if you heard that recently. So
I haven't heard of that. I won't be getting one. I can tell you that.
But also don't forget, Shannon, technology is like fashion. It's in today, gone tomorrow. But guess what? It comes back into the day after.
It does. It does. Right? Old school. But yes, I remember the flip phone. I mean, I remember pagers. So there you go. But I remember the flip phones were super cool.
Don't forget the brick phones in your cars.
Yeah. Yes.
And you thought it was cool. Hey.
Oh my gosh. I remember I was one of the first of my friend group to get the phone, and people came out to my car. They were like, can we see your phone? It was like a big deal.
Yeah. Well, this is good to turn into a history lesson for your listeners.
So, okay, back on track. So you had started a lot of companies, but I most remember reading in your background about you starting this company while I believe you were at Chicago.
You mean the Hyde Park Angels? It's quite now become a leader in the innovation ecosystem in Chicago. So when I was at business school, and 2 years when I walked into the university, I thought, oh my God, it's 2 years. So it's going to be such a long time. But it went by so fast. And I realized that, and again, this is a learning probably from your father, is no matter what you do, make sure you do something which is impactful. There's a saying in Hindi, "Hava nahi baat karne ka," meaning just don't, mix things, whatever you do, make an impact on it. I was looking around and I'm like, oh man, there's amazing finance and economic ecosystem and infrastructure at University of Chicago. But every other kid I talk to, they're looking to start a business. They're looking to start businesses from ice cream franchises to e-commerce companies to payment companies. Actually, we had one of my friends from business school, Brian Johnson, the longevity guy today, was a fintech guy in business school with me. He started Braintree, which was acquired by eBay. So all of these things, and the school had just different things that was going on from the perspective of pieces in the innovation ecosystem. And as you know, nothing is driven without money. Right? You can't do anything without money, and especially risky capital, right? The guys who can write $50,000 checks, $25,000 checks, right? Now, which we call angels. But really, how do you create this ecosystem enabling these technology companies or any companies that is to do with innovation and just startups to really to blossom? So I got together with Steve Kaplan, who is the professor of entrepreneurship at University of Chicago. I gave him a pitch. And by the way, I think 80 professors I went to before him said, what are you talking about? No one's going to put money into risky companies. This is Chicago, right? We need to see brick and mortar stuff or real estate stuff or stuff like that. And when I went to Steve Kaplan, I'm like, hey, I want to partner with you. I want to partner with the University of Chicago. By the way, I'm a student here also. He liked what I was saying. He's like, Vishal, I was just thinking of doing this. So now the Hyde Park Angels have gone to become one of the leading angel networks, not just in Chicago, but in the United States. There's, I think, almost 250 angels. Each have committed an X amount of money every year after year. I was heavily involved with it for the first 10 years. And then at the end, sometimes you have to have the next generation take it over.
Yeah.
And then the Hyde Park Angels, the angel network have also created a venture fund called the Hyde Park Partners. And they have done some amazing startup companies, amazing companies. The first initial ones was a company called Bump. If you remember Bump in the early 2000s, where you can bump your contacts.
Bump your contact. I was going to say, wasn't that the phone thing where I bumped
Exactly. Yeah. So that was the University of Chicago. And then Google bought it. And eventually Google was using the technology. I don't know how far it went to bump transactions, right? Yeah. Meaning what Apple Pay is today. And I got off the board probably in 2000, maybe 15 or 16. So,
I mean, and this dovetails into the next part of your story. So now you are we're definitely not going to be a doctor anymore. You are fully entrenched in the business, armed with MBA, have tried to start lots of companies, like you said, and most successful people have started lots of things that have failed. You've learned to be resilient. Obviously, you've learned that lesson. Like you said, it ain't over till it's over. And this is, again, in the prep for this, we talked about there's the infamous speech by President George W. Bush Jr., who talked about being a C student at Yale. And look, he became the president. So at this point, you've actually done pretty well for yourself for not going to med school. And you start this career. You're certainly confident at this point. And the song you picked is another Hammer song. And it's Pray. So take us through this part of your journey.
So the Pray was more towards getting out of college. Everyone is, I shouldn't say everyone. Let me talk about myself. Very uncertain. Getting out of college, you're dabbling into multiple things, and you really don't know what's going on. Actually, to be honest with you, I'm still confused in life. And I'm almost 50 years old. And that's a great thing about life. If you don't reinvent yourself, if you don't, go against your curiosity, not towards your curiosity in terms of figuring out what's the next thing, what's the next best thing, right? I always tell folks, like, just think about it. Today, everyone's talking about AI. Guess what they were talking about yesterday, right?
Yeah.
People forgot they were talking about blockchain, Bitcoin, and all that stuff. Right. You can buy, guess what? Back then, you can buy a digital island next to Snoop Dogg in the sandbox. But who's talking about that today? No one's talking about that today, right? The song came more in terms of the uncertainty, what one has to go through when you are an early after graduation, trying to understand where the right fits are and the right clicks are, right at the end of the day. And everyone is not built equally from the perspective of mindset. So again, as a medical doctor, that was my sister's mindset, but mine was more towards finance and trying to really understanding how do you really structure corporations and companies. And we mimicked, or at least I mimicked that in terms of overlaid that with innovation and technology. And that why did I do that is because being in Silicon Valley. If I was in LA, I might have been a villain. Who knows?
You might have been in entertainment. Not a villain. I don't believe that.
Playing a villain.
Oh, you can act. I mean, it's not too late. It's not too late. We can follow
with my salt and pepper. I would have to play the grandpa role now.
Not too late. So you leave Chicago and do you come back to the Bay Area?
Yeah, I come back to the Bay Area. To be honest with you, what was going in my mindset in 2004, 2005 was one is jaded when one thinks about entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley. It's all about technology. But guess what? You are an entrepreneur owning a gas station. You are an entrepreneur owning a 7-Eleven, right? You are an entrepreneur even being a politician, right? Because guess what? Your product is just yourself. But in Silicon Valley, the entrepreneur's mindset is it's all technology. And I really didn't know if I was going to be leading that way from the perspective of, do I really want to be in technology? So I'm done with my 2 years, and my thought was to become an investment banker. And I'm like, hey, it's University of Chicago. I'm going to go work for Goldman Sachs. But guess what? It didn't happen. Silicon Valley brought me back. So you can't get out of this because it's just, At the end of the day, it's just so much amazing leaders that are here. It's more of perspective of their mindsets, the way they're thinking, right? A lot of people ask me, what is Silicon Valley all about? I'm like, there's no way to replicate it. There's just no way to replicate it. It's in the air. It's the mindset. It's the thinking. It's the ecosystem. It's just the whole 9 yards. So came back in 2007, 2008, something like that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And so you are finding your way. I get it, because look, there's a lot of people who are real. There's a lot of people who aren't real. And so you just wading through a lot of junk to get to like the gold bar, if you will.
Yeah.
But you're grinding and you're building your career, and you actually start doing really well in building this career, and then, investing and helping companies grow and structure. And so at some point, you kind of probably got to look back and be like, hey, this worked out. I was in the right place. I did the right things. I know that you're a relationship person. So you've definitely started. I think you already had the relationship skills. I didn't know you in high school, but I could tell you were probably one of those guys. But you really honed it in.
Surprising. Fun fact about me, I was an introvert in high school.
Really? I would have never guessed that.
If you came to me and talked to me, I would not even talk back to you. Yeah. Or have a conversation with you. I was a very shy kid. Even if someone looked at me, I'm like, oh my God, I had to go away. And
when did that change? Because that is not the person I met. Or I've known for all these years.
Actually, if you really want to honestly know what the way it changed was, I think it was the summer of junior to senior year in high school. I worked for a politician over the summer. To be honest with you, I was his bag boy, but then I really saw, because an intern, right? You're an intern. Saw him in action at what we call in his element as an LA-based congressman. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty fun. Now you can't stop me talking. So it's on the opposite spectrum.
Yeah, you know what he was teaching you, which has done you very well in your career, is the value of these relationships. I'll tell you, if you want to get a master class, for those of y'all with kids listening, if you want to get a master class in relationships, have them intern for a politician.
Yeah.
Almost nobody does it as well as politicians. They know how to do relationships, but it does help you in life and careers to develop these relationships.
That, and also when you're walking precincts and things to that effect, you're putting into positions that you're not used to. I have 2 young kids. They use the word scared. Dad, I don't want to do this because I'm scared. Actually, scared is not the right word. They're unfamiliar with the circumstance. So that makes you a little bit nervous in terms of what to expect.
Yeah.
Scared is the wrong word, right? But it's more unexpectedness of how to behave, how to talk, and things to that effect. Yeah. And to your point, if you work for a politician, you see the ins and outs of how they're reacting. And if I may just say one more point, I was on a panel with the First Lady of Utah, Abby Cox, about 2 years ago in a conference. And she was mentioning that today, kids, till they go to college, they have 1,500 less interactions than you and I grew up with.
Yeah.
So the touch, the feel, the smile, the smirk, whatever it is, getting body language from one another, that's very important.
It's the games, the gaming.
Yeah. So.
And the phones. I 100% agree. I mean, I have older kids, and I've got one who I have to say, can you leave the house? My parents never had to ask me to leave the house. They had to, when am I coming? You better be home. I couldn't wait to leave the house, but I also didn't have their distractions at home to keep me engaged. So it's hard raising kids in this digital age like that.
One last thing on this point, Shannon, is that I remember when President Clinton was the president, he was being interviewed by someone. But the question was, how did you become such a great orator? You're just so amazing, President Clinton. And he said, did you take classes? What did you do? He's like, it's very simple. He was the last generation before TVs. And he's like, what do you mean by that? He's like, well, guess what? When your parents' friends came over for dinner, you had to sit at the dinner table and converse with them. So how's life? How's school? And you had to have conversations. Again, the touch, the feel, the whole body language you got to see. So as technology grows, I know we're all technologists, but as technology grows, It's a double-edged sword, right? For compensating for one benefit, there might be one other counter reaction to that. So
That's right. That's right.
last point on that.
Last point. Last point. Okay, so you're done with school, you're finding your stride in your career. Let's talk about, before we get to where you are today, how you built up your career and what you were doing, what you're investing in. Like, let's talk about what you
Yeah.
looked for. Let's better understand that period of your life. We're still kind of in the prey era, but at the same time, you kind of transcended that a little bit. I think you found your footing for sure.
So graduating from college, again, when I was praying, I was realizing, oh my, where do I get a job? Everyone was saying, because I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. That's what I wanted to do. But in the 90s, kids, 21-year-olds, you have to have gray hair, right? I mean,
Even from MBA school, that wasn't that popular, was it?
Yeah, yes and no, but especially in the 90s, it wasn't popular. Go get some experience, learn the traits of big corporates. So then I worked for a large satellite manufacturing company. I was there for about 3 years, and it took me one day to realize, holy moly, I don't want to work for large corporations. Hence, I did not mention which company I was working for.
Just large. We know it's large. We get it.
I was like, if I may, you say something, holy crap, this is the way companies work. It's so inefficient. Everything is just, and anyways. So then I did my time for almost 3 years. And then started a fiber optics company. Well, before that, I was part of a bunch of startups that did well, and then started a fiber optics company. Unfortunately, that fiber optics company, we raised a ton load of money. You know the saying, the bigger you are, the harder you fall.
The more money, more problems. What they say?
More money, more problems.
More problems.
Even though Jerry Maguire said, show me the money, but if you have too much money, it's going to be an issue. So a few things that I learned, because we grew slowly. It's kind of interesting. Growth is slow, but death is fast. And I'm talking about startups. Growth is slow, but death is fast. It took us 3 years to get to a point with maybe 150 people, raising gazillions of dollars. And don't forget, I was 24, 25 years old. I didn't even know what fiber optics was. A few things I learned from that was investors are good. Listen to them to a certain level. But at the end of the day, you're executing. Yeah. They do not know what's going on the ground. They might be thinking that they know what's going on the ground, but they don't. They told us to grow. We grew like crazy. And the 2001 telecom bust happened in Q1, if you remember. Q1 of 2000, the internet bust happened. Companies like the Globe, if you remember, was a $200 stock, went down to whatever. Zoom, XOOM, not the wire transfer money, but it was competing against Yahoo and all these guys. They went down really quickly. So anyways, a year exactly, the telecom companies, within a quarter, many companies went under. If you kind of look at it, even Cisco stock went from, what was it, $200 to $20. That's what I was saying. Growth is steady, death is fast. And you got to prepare for the worst. Plan for the best, prepare for the worst. You need to have a rainy day fund. Really look at the core basics, and we call it fundamentals, but the core basics of a startup, right? Good team, good product. At the end of the day, make money, right? Be conservative of cash and raise more than you need to raise. One thing that I would also do differently is have venture funds that have a deeper pocket with dry powder where they can look, which is now it's a different case, right? Back then, let me qualify what I mean. Back then, you had to exit within 3 years. If you kind of look at it, the data, exits were happening within 3 to 5 years. Today, it's 15 years, right? And that's the reason you have so many other businesses coming out of it. For instance, the secondary markets, correct? Where employees are selling their stock and even institutions are selling their stock because guess what? They can't held their stock for 19 years. A perfect example is Reddit. 19 years from seed to exit. So that was kind of the journey in terms of, I was not praying, but it was getting, again, also from my personal development level was a little bit more confidence in terms of getting into this element that we talk about, feeling comfortable with your surroundings and feeling confident that you're able to do what you're able to, what you're saying in terms of from the perspective of performance, structure, building, and all that stuff. So
give us just the highlights of your career from roughly now, let's say we're in the early 2010 teens and things of that nature. Like, where are you going before we get to where you are today?
So I've been where I am today for the last 20 years in terms of working for the single family office, after graduating from University of Chicago in 2007, was still doing the same thing. But then we had this idea from the family office side, hey, India's growing. Who better than three Indian guys who've done something in Silicon Valley to try to build an innovation ecosystem in India? That's one thing I haven't talked to you about. So I'm going to deviate a little bit of this conversation. So I actually worked in India for 10 years. I never told you that, I think. And I lived in India. Another fun fact. I lived in India for 5 years, from 2013 to 2018. For the Indians that know that my son still likes dosa and sambar more than rotis, if you get that joke. There's a big rivalry between South India and North India.
Okay, that I get.
And North India, they eat rotis and pratas. And South India, they eat dosas.
Okay. Gotcha.
So we were living in South India. So coming back, we've invested into some amazing companies, but we were ahead of our time. I think India is an amazing place to invest, amazing brain power, amazing just innovation. And we were trying to figure out how can we build an innovation ecosystem there. A big part of technology is hitting it at the right time. And guess what? You don't know you hit it till the right time, till you hit it. Right?
Hence your Dropbox story.
Exactly. My liquid disk was 20 years too early. So we were just too early in India. It's just booming. The country is just booming. The economics of the country is just booming. If you look at it, the per capita income is growing. Of course, the economics is very different, right? For $1,000 cell phone that we buy in the United States for an iPhone, they're willing to pay $200 to $300, right? Just because of the economics, right? So coming back in 2013 to 2018, and really saw upfront where the innovation ecosystem was coming to fray from in India. And it's kind of interesting. We moved October 2013, moved back in October 2018. So around Halloween and all that wonderful stuff, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. Then 2019 comes, spending a lot of time with my kids at their school and things to that effect. And 2020, boom, COVID. So lockdown. But coming back to the professional side of what I was doing, still doing the same thing.
Before we get into that, I want to backtrack for a minute for our listeners. So, Vishal, my mother is listening.
Okay.
And so let's explain for my mother, because she's going to brag on you like she knows you. Explain what a family office is.
So once there's wealth that has been created, whatever the amount of wealth that there is, you have a couple options, right? And the main options traditionally was to go to a Goldman Sachs, to a Morgan Stanley, and all these big firms and park your money there. And what they pulled, and this is what happened to us, or at least to my father's generation, is that and nothing wrong with this, they have a diversified portfolio, right? You can't put all of your eggs in one basket, like the famous finance saying is. You have a certain amount in commodities, certain amount in bonds, certain amount in this, certain amount is in staples and all that stuff. But Silicon Valley people understand technology and they understand risk. The more risks you take, the more hopefully returns you'll have. And, getting 12% or 8% in a bond or 6% in a California bond or whatever it is, it's wonderful. But, we want a certain portion of the capital to be high risk. And also at the end of the day, you control your destiny. Meaning from the perspective of, if you have some of these large banks controlling your cash, they're really influencing you on where the investments are going into. So single family office is one family that makes a certain amount of capital. You can hire folks to manage the money. And the principal is directing majority of where the capital is going in terms of from an investment perspective. Then you have multifamily offices, which are more like RIAs, wealth managers. Again, going back to not necessarily the Goldman Sachs of the world, but there are smaller RIAs and things to that effect that are there. They're still helping you, guiding you in terms of where the potential investment opportunities are. So ours is a single family office. We hired a few folks and we're managing the capital into different things. So about 60 or maybe 70% of the assets are in the public markets. And 30 to 40% of the assets are in the private markets that include, like you mentioned in the opening, 17 different venture funds, 20 plus investments. I always kid around 25 plus direct investments that haven't died yet. But we invest into later stage companies, right? So the companies that you mentioned in the opening are much more later stage. So we're not necessarily interested, I'm going a little bit into the thesis, but we're not necessarily interested in hitting a 200x return on our investment. But we're fine with a 5 to 6x return. that means you're investing into more of a later stage than an earlier stage. So at the top of the pyramid, you might have 1,000 companies that are invested by, I'm just focusing on from venture capital side, right? So you have, oh my God, this is great. I go to a lot of AGMs with these VC firms. And AGMs for your listeners are annual general meetings, which VCs get together and say how wonderful that they're doing. I have not heard of VC that's said how wonderful they're not doing, but that's okay. Right. At a seed. So when I was growing up in my earlier formidable business career, you had seed and series A. That's it. Now you have seed, you have pre-seed. And guess what? Some VCs came to me and says, we only come at the inception stage. I'm like, holy crap, that sounds cool. It sounds like a movie. He's like, it is a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, inception stage. So I'm like, inception is what? It's like just two guys or two gals with an idea.
With the idea at a coffee shop?
At a coffee shop. We used to call that seed. But now it's called inception.
Yeah, that used to be, it's called inception. Oh.
So what I learned in my career is now today, again, you have to invent yourself. Series A is a company that's already doing $1 million, maybe 2 million, maybe 3 million in revenue. And Series B is maybe 20 to plus billions of dollars. So anyways, coming back to the strategy is we invest into, and this might not be in the right order, but we invest into venture funds to hopefully co-invest with them in some of their winners. So we're LPs, like you mentioned, in 17 different venture funds. And there's about 10 VC firms that we work very closely with, where they allow us to, not allow us, but we kind of co-invest with them. I guess I can say they allow us to co-invest with them on some of their investments that they've recently made. So
thank you for that, because I know that there's several people out here listening. There's lots of people who will understand that, but my podcast, it has a very wide range of people who listen to it. And so someone will be like, family office, I'm not really sure what that means. Yeah. So thank you for explaining that. Let's go to where you are today. First of all, you are a prolific speaker at so many things. Let's talk about your own summit that you created. Also want to talk about just the giving of your time. You mentor so many people. You give of your time. We talked about best buddies. I want you to share a little bit about that. The song you picked, this is a great song. I feel like Coming by the Weekend. So tell us how that's inspiring this phase of your life.
So I feel that coming is just, again, once you're on top of your game, the element is there. You converge from necessary to things that you want to do, from necessity to things that you want to do. And that necessity stage is a little bit of praying also through the previous thought that we had, or at least I had. Now you feel it's coming, meaning from the perspective of you're in your element, you understand what's going on, you have the ecosystem, not necessarily figured out, but you're part of the ecosystem. So you mentioned Sidebar Summit. Thank you for mentioning that. So Sidebar is actually something which is cool. At least I think it's cool. And another reason why we started this was still to be relevant in the ecosystem. Relevancy in investments is very important. We have monthly, I don't call it necessary networking roundtable discussions, but they are more relationship building, not like Match.com, but relationships, right? In terms of business relationships. So at the end of the day, you want to do things with people that you like. You want to do things with people that you want to support. And you want to do things with people that you want to, someone told me actually, which was very kind. It's like, Vishal, I want to get old with you. Like, I want to get, in terms of, we want to have a long-lasting career or long-lasting relationship, which is kind of cool. The same thing I'm having with you, Shannon. We've known each other for many years. This is the first time we're doing something because, we get along so well. So that we have an amazing relationship. So networking to me is there's an ask. There's 1,001 people to ask. And how do you really build this relationship? And at the end of the day, commerce should happen. If not today, maybe tomorrow. And if it doesn't happen, at least you have a wonderful relationship, friendship, and whatever the case is. The last one we did was on June 5th. Oh, it was magical. It was for the opening bell in the New York Stock Exchange. We try to do it at these amazing different locations where our membership and guests get really impactful experiences. So besides viewing the opening relationship, and by chance, Circle was going public, which I'm an investor in through General Catalyst. And it was just great. Walking the floor, you had a bunch of General Catalyst folks there. You had a bunch of, Jim Breyer was the largest investor or largest outside shareholder of Circle. He was there. We all had amazing conversations. But then we had a summit, which is upstairs. And these are more thought leadership discussions. The welcoming remark by Alan Petrikov. If folks who are familiar with Alan Petrikov, he's one of the fabrics of New York venture capitalists. He started Apex, which is now a $300 billion private equity firm. Greycroft, which is a $5 billion venture capital firm. And even at the age of 91, he started a fund called Prime Time, which is for longevity. And he's like, Vishal, don't worry, I'm here for another 27 years, is because his longevity folks have told him he's going to live till 117. So it's a great time to invest with him. Then we let it off with a fireside chat with Bill Barnhide, who is the CEO of Abra, which is going public. Then we had an amazing panel with Chris Kelly, who is one of the owners of the Sacramento Kings. And he was able to invest into the Sacramento Kings is because he was one of the early guys at Facebook. And then we ended the conversation with Urjit Sethi, who is the CEO of Kraken. And the one before that, we did it with Hemant Taneja, who is the CEO of General Catalyst. He hosted us. And the goal of this is to have thought leadership conversations. Again, not an ask, but a thought leadership conversation about where things are heading, where things are going from an innovation perspective, from a technology perspective, from a market perspective, and things to that effect. Our next one is on March 8th in San Francisco, and all of your listeners are invited. I'm sure you'll tell them how to get in touch with me or with the Sidebar Summit gang after this conversation. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, before we get to that part about where we ask you for your deets so our listeners can follow you, I misspoke. And actually, your very last song, so the weekend song was kind of the lead up to where we are today. Your very last song is actually I Belong to You by Lenny Kravitz.
Well, it says I belong to you, but I think that's more of a romantic song. So I just take the I out, just it belongs to you. So when you're in, it just belongs to you. So maybe we'll start a new song.
Right. There you go.
We might have to get copyrights from Lenny Kravitz, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It belongs to you. You know, again, when you're at the top of your element, you understand what's going on. Not to say that the world belongs to you, but it's just you're in your comfort zone. It belongs to you, right? In terms of, you know, what you can add value from the perspective of knowledge and technology and innovation, all the good stuff we talked about for the last 1 hour, but at the same time, contribute. And one thing I didn't answer to your previous questions, contributing back to society, you mentioned about mentorship, best buddies. My father always told me, once you're at a point where you are able to give back, not just capital, but also time and your mind share, pick one or two things because the world is very broken. So I decided education was a big part. And there's only one thing and only one thing that I think can solve the world problems, not any president, but it is education, right? If you kind of think about it, if one is educated, you can change your life trajectory, no matter what it is, no matter what kind of household you grow up in, what kind of humbleness you grew up in, whatever the case is. Perfect example. If my father was not educated, I would not be on this podcast with you. I'll be a farmer somewhere in India. So that's a big part. And education and drive. So like you mentioned, UC Merced, that's just an amazing school. I joined the board in 2009 and really saw it. It was a startup. We had 200 kids graduating. Today we have 10,000 students in the school. The first graduation class, the commencement speaker was Michelle Obama. So don't forget, take yourself in 2005 was a graduation incoming class. 2009 was a graduation class. Michelle Obama just became the first lady in January, whatever the date was. And the graduation was in May. So of course she was unpacking. It's like, I got to go to Merced. And probably the first question she asked was to her chief of staff, where is Merced?
Where is that?
So it's in the Central Valley. The reason that I got involved was for many reasons. Besides being a startup educational ecosystem, we have 80% first-time college goers in their families. That's just not one change, it's generational change. Generational change. Community.
Neighbors, cousins. Yeah, everybody knows that kid went to college.
Exactly, right? And guess what? The probability of that kid's going to school is much higher. That was one factor. Another thing is 60% of the college goers are Hispanic backgrounds and 50% of them are women. It's just in terms of, it's not necessarily the target, but just that's how it happened because of the region it's in.
Yeah.
And going back to a point is education can change a trajectory of a human being no matter what he or she does. So I'm involved with that. I'm involved with Best Buddies, which you're very familiar with.
Let's talk about because I shared, my 27-year-old was autistic. We were part of a Best Buddies program. And so explain what it is. It's what it sounds like,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
man, was it just to watch him light up at his Best Buddy activities and the
absolutely.
calls with it's just, as a parent, you can't put a price tag on it.
So it started out, actually, it started by Anthony Shriver in Miami. Now it's chapters everywhere, not just in the United States, but
And
globally.
Shriver of the Kennedy Shriver.
Of the Kennedy Shrivers,
Yeah.
absolutely. He's just done an amazing job. Millions of kids are gone into the program. And what Best Buddies at the end of the day, it's mentorship.
Yeah.
Everyone on this call, if you can't, please do find a mentor that you can rely on, because I've known so many mentors besides my father, who I can tell you, everyone who shaped not just my career, but my life. Just all the way from small things, from advices that he or she gave to connections to people. And one thing is layered after another, right? So what Best Buddies originally started was with a buddy. And it's, I think, 31 years old now, in terms of the organization. And they grew up the food chain in terms of from the perspective of they would like to work with a kid who has IDD, intellectual disabilities, and guide them and graduate them all the way till not just college, but thereafter. And there are programs for mentors to come at the early stage. There's mentors to come at the college stage, and there's mentors that can come at the post stage. And there's kids have become some amazing leaders, amazing entrepreneurs, and things to that effect. And then they have also other programs where they have community living in different universities, where again, you build on each other in terms of perspective. And at the end of the day, it's education and confidence that everyone needs, no matter who you are.
I will tell you that I remember talking to some of the buddies. So these are the folks who volunteer to be paired, with someone in the Best Buddies program. And a lot of them, I don't know if I'm going to say they got more out of it, but they definitely would say the surprising thing for them was how much they got out of that relationship with the person they were paired with that they weren't expecting to get out of it. And lots of those relationships continue way longer than like the quote unquote, the commitment of spending a year or two or whatever in the program. So I'm a huge fan of it. We certainly will share the links to Best Buddies in the show notes for sure.
And Shannon, at the end of the day, if you don't support our own, who are we here for? What are we here for? Right? And we got to build this world. It's overly said, leave this world a better place than we were, but it's actually true. And the reason, what I said originally, my father said, pick one or two things, because this world is so broken. Whatever small impact each of us can do while we're here is contributing to that.
I thank you, right? I thank you for your time and your efforts in doing this because, and here's the thing, so many of these great leaders that I've been interviewing are what I call servant leaders. At the end of the day, that is a big part of who they are, and it has made them successful. They don't do it to make them successful. That's just in the DNA that I'm seeing of all these impactful, successful people. It's just something that's part of them. So
absolutely.
I really thank you for doing that. So look, we got to wrap it up. But I need
to know a couple things. Do we have to?
Wrap it up. We gotta wrap it up. Sorry. But I gotta get from you a couple things. How we can follow you, like how do my listeners best follow you? Is there anything we can do to support you? And I need one song that just makes you happy when you hear it.
Vishal at edgewoodvp.com. Very simple. VISHAL at edgewoodvp.com. Please email me. I'm sure you're going to put the links on the website up, edgewoodvp.com, sidebarsummit.com, and then whoever's in connecting with me, happy to. And if you don't mind, just put Shannon's name in the subject so I know it goes up in the priority list. And then the song. I used to sing this for my my kids, but not the exact lyrics. It's 50 cents. It's 50 Cent's song. And everything's intertwined. I saw 50 Cent live at last year's Best Buddies Gala. And it's in the club.
You can find me in the club, bottle full of bub. Got what you need. I'm into heaven. Please. I'm not into making love. That song.
Oh, you know what? Is it the wrong song? It's maybe it's the wrong song. It's your birthday. I think it's the wrong. It's not in the club. I'm sorry. It's the wrong song. Whatever the in the club is. I'm sorry. It's your birthday.
It's your birthday. Song. It starts. Go shorty. It's your birthday. We're going to party like it's your birthday. We're going to drink Bacardi like it's your birthday. Because we don't give up because it's your birthday. Find me in the club.
Exactly. Exactly. So I have a different version. It's your birthday. It's your birthday. We drink chocolate milk like it's your birthday. We party like it's your birthday. Guess what? It's your birthday.
Chocolate milk? No Bacardi. You're not teaching the
No
kids to drink
Bacardi.
Bacardi.
I might have Bacardi in my chocolate milk, but
You
it's just By the way, rum and chocolate goes so well.
actually does. There's actually a good combination. So in the club,
In the club.
that's the we actually both got happy off of that song.
We got
I don't
all
know if
got
you noticed. All got happy off of In the Club. That's a great song. I mean,
great
it
song.
transcends kind of. You can hear In the Club in the most randomest of places in the world. That's a great song, and I'm not surprised knowing who you are. That it is so on brand. Listen, we could talk to you all day. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and really showing how, besides the resilience and all of the things that you had to go through in your career journey, it really goes back to a lot of what you said. You had supporters, mentor supporters.
Yeah.
There is some being in the right place, right time. Being in Silicon Valley was just a huge, huge part of your story. But ultimately, this is a story that goes back to something you're passionate about, and that's called education. It goes back to that. Like, that is the equalizer that like changed all things, was just starting to have that be a part of your lineage, if you will.
Yeah.
And what you're doing now to help other people have that be a part of their lineage. All comes back to that. So thank you. Thank you for all you do for so many. Thank you for being on No Boxes, Just Verses. Really appreciate your story and your time. And we will be supporting your summit for sure.
Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to No Boxes, Just Verses. And if this episode moved y'all, please share it, rate us, follow the show on your favorite platform, and we can keep building our leadership playlists together. So you can find me, guys, on Instagram as Shannon Nash 1 and No Boxes, Just Verses on Instagram. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Shannon Nash ESQ CPA. You can also find No Boxes, Just Verses on LinkedIn. You can visit our website at noboxesjustverses.com. Finally, don't forget to check out the show notes. The show notes are super important because this is where the playlists will live. You will be able to get these playlists on Apple and Spotify. You'll also be able to follow up and see how to reach out to the guests, follow them, and support them. Until next time, I need you to stay unboxed. You come for the stories, but you stay for the playlists. I'm Shannon Nash, and I'm out.